that you might hear when you're talking about, oh, my daughter, she is so, but it was always said that I was smart. And so that's something that I held on to, and that's what got me to college, that's what got me a scholarship, and that's what set me off in the world. And then I went into this career called radio, and I fell in love with radio as a child because radio, free music, and it was available, so that was like a friend, right? You could hear your favorite songs, you hear something fun from the DJ, and it kept you company. So I always tell people, music and books really saved my life, because reading helps exercise the imagination, and even though I was always faced with what wasn't possible, it's the ability to read books is what taught me what was possible, and so I always cherish that. So, life takes me on this amazing journey in radio. Well, how amazing is it that I pick a career that is very male-dominated and always tell women that you're not enough. It's set up to be just the big welcome mat out here. It was always having to be judged. But with that, there's something in me that came from the childhood experience of survival. I always like to tell people, I'm Italian, by the way, so I have that Rocky mentality. Rocky Balboa. No matter how many times you get knocked down, there's something in me that always caused me to get back up. The best way that they could, but I also felt a responsibility, like I want to make them proud. I want to be able to do something important and make an impact with my life. And so I focused on being successful in my career, and gratefully, I've been able to achieve a lot of success there with radio. And so people would always say, well, are you ever gonna get married or have a family or things of that nature? And even though my family life growing up was tumultuous, it was still something I desired. But I wasn't physically able to have children, and I found that out very early in my life. So yet another situation that really wasn't set up for my success, but somewhere deep on the inside, I had the faith that someday that would come to pass. And so my mom passed away in 2019, just 5 years after my dad, who passed away from cancer. And later in her life, there was a great peace between my parents and I, because it comes from the forgiveness of knowing it wasn't your fault. Because remember, my parents got married because my mom was pregnant with me, and I was well aware of that as a child, so you carry the burden of thinking, my parents are miserable with each other, and that it's all my fault. They wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't for me. And somewhere deep on the inside, you just seem to carry that. But I had made great peace with my parents, and I knew that there was an awareness from my mom that she felt like she could have been a better mom. But you know what? They gave me the opportunity to live, to read, to listen to music, and I found my way. And so I'm always grateful for that. So when my mom was dying, I said to my mother, what is it that you wish for me? And she said, I wish for you to be happy. And so for me, it was that wanting my own family, my own special person. And I didn't really know how that was going to come to pass, but I heard the voice of God in the last few weeks when my mom was transitioning. And God said to me very clearly, I have all of the desires of your heart if you'll just clear the clutter. And so I'm sitting there, and if you've ever been with someone who is about to transition, there's a lot of quiet time. So my mother would sleep, and I would sit there, and I would again hear the voice of God. I have all of the desires of your heart if you will just clear the clutter. Now, if you've ever heard the voice of God, you know in your deepest inside that that's the voice. And I instinctively knew what he was telling me, that I had been so focused on being Terry Thomas and successful in my career and giving my heart and soul to it, to prove that I was worthy enough to have a seat in the room, that Teresa had been neglected. So Terry was doing good, but Teresa maybe not so much. And so I started making a list. What have I not done that I needed to take care of? And I'm talking about basic stuff. Clean out a closet, get the garage together, blessed to have a house, but there's some repairs that needed to happen, things like that. So I'm making my list. My mom transitioned, and it was the moment my mom transitioned, it was 2:30 in the morning. I got the call from my sister who just got the call, and all of a sudden I heard birds chirping in the trees. And those birds stayed there chirping, making this beautiful music until the sun came up. And I knew that was my mom's way of sort of giving me peace in a moment where I was alone. knowing that she had transitioned. So I came back to Houston and I had that list. I had that list of how Terry was going to clear the clutter for Teresa. So I went to work like it was a full-time job. I started clearing out closets, organizing things, getting repairs done, taking care of things. And I knocked that thing out. And I was like, God, I got the memo. So here comes this guy into my life, and I'm thinking, it is my time. And so I have all my hopes and dreams set on this guy. This guy, he is everything that I think that I want in my life. And I found out that wasn't the case. Disappointment. And God, I was like, God, well, I did what you asked me to do. But then God came back and he said, Teresa, I told you I have all of the desires of your heart if you will just clear the clutter. And I'm looking around in my house and it's pristine. My junk drawer is organized. And I was like, but, and he said, clear the clutter. And I knew what he meant. It was the internal clutter that we pick up in our lives. Because, you know, growing up, I think our parents do the best they can with what they have, but we collect baggage along the way. And I had a lot of internal baggage that was stuffed on the inside that I hadn't dealt with. You know, dealing with things like real grief from losing your parents both to cancer in 5 years difference. You know, making peace with the fact that you worked your whole life just to get their approval, and did they really approve? And they would tell me that later in life, you know, when they learned how to be better people, you know, very much toward the end, there was a lot of trying to reinforce that, but I almost didn't want to believe it because it wasn't genuine to me, because I had spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't good enough. So God was like, girl, if you don't clear the clutter. So I said, I got to do what I have to do to work that out. And I went into therapy. I was able to talk things out. I was able to get some perspective on some of the things in my life. And I was able to find peace, the real true peace. And peace for me looks like a lot of different things. It was getting outside in nature. It was riding my bicycle. It was reconnecting with music that wasn't music of my job, because I just love music so much, and just reading a lot and just doing the things that Teresa really enjoyed that I had neglected because I was very busy being Terry Thomas. And then, you know, to be honest with you, God was faithful, because in 2021, here came an opportunity for me. I met this amazing man, actually 2020 July, towards the end of the pandemic, on Facebook, who is a single dad raising 4 daughters on his own. And we went on our first date December 4th, got engaged on June 8th, and married July 4th of 2021. So I would tell you that God supersized me in the best way possible. But the pivotal moment for me was in those final weeks with my mom, of hearing God, really hearing God and listening about clearing the clutter. And so even now, because we can still know that about ourselves, but we feel weighed down, like we'll get free, and then here we go, we feel weighed down again. It's like a cycle. And when I find that I'm feeling so weighed down, I have to check in with myself and say, okay, what clutter have you accumulated? It could be physical clutter in the space, or even old clutter coming back, trying to take root again. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be here with you, because we just want to be able to say, hey, I'm not perfect. I know what it feels like to struggle. A lot of times it all looks pretty on the outside and it's not so good on the inside, but that you're not alone. And that oftentimes it is simply because we have accumulated too much clutter, and that's what can bring us into a difficult space. So that's a little bit about my story.
Yes, put your hands together. Yes, ma'am. Amen. Amen. So while we have the last 10 minutes of this session, one thing that I did mention to Dr. Williams was that I wanted the audience to be able to ask questions. To me, I go to my therapist religiously. Okay, I gotta talk to somebody because I can't always consult with myself. Okay, I don't trust me sometimes. God is still refining the hood in me. But I want to use these last 10 minutes. Does any entrepreneur, any attendee in the room have a question in regards to tips or what they can do in an entrepreneurial therapy opportunity? All right, Dr. Wise.
Hi.
But you can ask of the lady. Right?
So my question is, you know, when you're going through entrepreneurship and you're going through your, I call it the superwoman syndrome, what are some of the techniques you use to transition?
Is that working?
Yeah, Dr.
Check, no,
No.
So it's so funny you would ask that because like I've had to master the whole concept of, and it's very apropos for where we are. You can't put new wine in old wine skins. And the way God talks to me is he'll say it 3 times and then he'll get my attention and I'm like, okay, all right, what you trying to say? And so I looked up wine skins and so what the difference between an old wine skin is it's hard, it's brittle, it's fixated, it can't move, it can't breathe, it's not pliable, it's not flexible. So I had to start looking within myself and saying, how do I expand my capacity? And like she said, I had to go all the way back and say, what is it that I want? Because I had a lot of false burdens that started from my childhood. What other people wanted of me, what other people expected of me, what other people thought I should do because I have the education, the knowledge, the whatever. So first of all, what do you want? What do you want? What is it that you want? And truly commit to what you want and think of and ask yourself, what is stopping me from getting where I want to be? Even if it's a loss, she wanted a life partner, someone to stand by her side. You may already be married and you want your marriage to flourish and be like a garden. You may want to have enough wealth to be able to vacation with your children when you want to. Wealth is many different things to different people. Entrepreneurship means different things to different people. For me, I wanted to be independently wealthy so that if anyone ever needed my help, I never had to turn them away. But it's different in time with my children, in time with my husband. So what is it that you want? Get quiet with yourself, and like she said, don't get discouraged because you'll start your list, and because you are not used to asking yourself what you want, you may have one thing. And then life will have to happen to show you, actually, I want 3 things. Get quiet with yourself and meditate on that.
I'm going to say this. Give yourself grace.
Yes.
We are quick as women to give everybody else grace but us. Nobody deserves your grace more than you do, first and foremost. The other thing, and I can say this, you know, I love my new life, but I have struggled, just to be transparent. We got 4 children, 8, 9, 12, and 13-year-old girls. And so I was a single woman with a dog, got supersized, and now I have a husband, 4 kids that are growing into their own personality, a dog and a cat. And so, and I'm blessed to be in my position with Radio 1, so that's my family there, and I've got to, you know, I got to keep things going, you know. We got to bring home the bacon, we got to make things work. So the other thing I would say is that everything doesn't win every day, and that's where really the grace comes in. Because some days I have to make a strategic decision based on what is required and what is the highest priority need of the day, and I really spend a lot of time talking to myself and saying the books will be balanced in the end if you just understand that everything needs its time, but it can't be at the same time. And so I will say my partnership with my husband is amazing because we communicate on how we can get it done for the children. But even with work, I mean, you know, you're a boss lady, you can't just dip out and hit the school pickup line. I have to strategically prepare my day for that. But give yourself grace and understand that everything is not going to win every day, but know that the books will be balanced in the end. I think that has worked really, really well for me. And when I feel so pressured and stressed, it's also okay to say, I need a minute. And I'm even teaching our girls that as well because, you know, kids, they're dealing with all kind of pressure. You know, all kinds of peer pressure, different things and expectations. And I teach them to say, I need a minute. You know, when I start to see irritability, what's going on with you? Do you need a minute? I need a minute. And so even for the kids, trying to teach, emotional IQ, I guess, is important as well.
Amen, amen. So I'm going to ask one of the final questions before we get you all. Many of our audience is like majority women, women of multifold families, business, and 9-to-5s in that. What are some healthy tips that can be practiced daily to have a restored and a healthy mind? Because of course we know a healthy mind helps to make better decisions. It's a healthy mind for a healthy body, a healthy mind for a healthy family. We know that the woman is the thermostat. So what tips can you give to the thermostat owners of how to keep good temperature even amongst themselves? And like you just stated, not for the convenience of others so much, but also for self.
But two quick things come to mind. You have to acknowledge the value in giving yourself the grace and the time. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes whatever you desire won't show up until you are well. But we are spending so much time doing the thing that we think we need to do, to get there, that we're not focusing on being well, just being well, whatever well is. And, the other thing is learning to love yourself. I know that sounds, but it's true. Some of us have a lot of high self-esteem, but we don't have high self-worth. And there's a difference. Okay? Self-esteem comes from the things you accomplish, the things you achieve, the outward things you do. You are, doing all of these great things at work, doing all these great things for others, and we will focus on that too much, but worth means like, I am worthy of this relationship that I desire. I am worthy of this peace that I desire. I am worthy of the friends that I desire. And the other thing I would say is watch yourself talk. I have a little thing I say, and my husband, he doesn't really like it, but I say, I'm trying to decide if hood me or heal me is going to respond. And that's my quick way to say to myself, take a moment and figure out, process how you're going to respond to a person, situation, or a thing. Give myself the grace to know that I am human and I get in survival mode, and I make myself laugh by doing it, because I will become obsessive over like, well, I gotta get my thoughts right, I gotta get this negative thinking out, I gotta get the positive thinking out. And so I had to make it comical for me to accept it. So monitor your thoughts, your negative thoughts.
Those are awesome. I like to say practice the pause. I think we're both similar with that, right? Also teaching the girls, practice the pause before you haul off and try to clock your sister. Let's practice the pause. For me, it was so invaluable to find out what really gives me peace, just me, myself, peace. I've always had a deep faith, so I would say, faith in something has been very instrumental. I've always felt the hand of God on me my whole life, so having a faith base for me is very important. But beyond that, during the pandemic, I was back on my bicycle. It's something I loved as a kid. I was every day, didn't care, it could be 102 out there, Terry was on the bike, putting in 10, 15 miles on the bicycle. So know what brings you peace. Know it's okay to do that. And then somebody pointed out to me recently that it was important for me to stay connected with the things that bring me peace, because as a mom now, I have 4 girls that are watching me. And so for them to see, oh, Terry's going on a bike ride right now, it's because, hey, Terry needs to clear her head and just spend some time with nature, and that helps me be a better Terry. It sets a good example for them. Whatever it is for you, it could be roller skating, taking a walk, sitting outside, whatever it is that is positive in nature. Because remember, I grew up with an alcoholic dad, so for him to try to get peace, he was chasing the bottle. I know that's not the right thing to do. So figuring out and finding out what gives you personal peace, scheduling time for yourself to do that, and making no apologies about that is, I think, essential. And, like I said, practice that pause.
Question?
Any other questions? Anyone? Stand up. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, this will be our final question, okay?
Yes, hello, my name is Victoria Mo. I have a question in regards to your parents. How do you make peace with who they are, and they might be stuck in their ways, and let's say you're not trying to limit God, because you know God can do all things, but when it comes to the parents, how do you make peace with who they are, and for them not taking accountability for the things that, you know, they did to us, but blaming you either directly or indirectly? How do you make peace with that?
Well, shoot, I remember being a kid and my dad saying, you know, you're the reason we're together. I mean, that's a heavy burden, right? I want to share, and let's be real quick because I know we're on time. When I was about 15 years old, so I grew up in a duplex that was on the same property as my dad worked in a garage, right? So I had went over to the garage to see where my dad was, and his boss was there, and he physically assaulted me. What do you do with that at 15? You're living in a house that he owns. Your dad's job is his location. But I did the right thing, though. I went back and I did tell my parents, but to be honest with you, they didn't know how to unpack that. Because it's my daughter has just been assaulted, but our whole life depends on this person as well, because that's how we're making money and putting food on the table. This is where we live. And they just didn't know how to unpack it. They didn't blame me or anything. They didn't blame me or say anything in particular. They just didn't do anything. And so it was some years later when I had come back to visit my parents that my mom had shared the incident with the man's wife. And so it was years after me stuffing that down and just trying to move forward with my life that it came to the surface again. And it was very challenging for me because I had stuffed it down and had tried to find a way to move forward with myself after being assaulted. And now my mom was trying to come in here, well, this man did this to my daughter. And so the wife came to me and said, did my husband do this to you? And I could not lie, I said yes. So I share that to say this. Our parents are not perfect, you know, because they're carrying whatever baggage that was put in them as well. And it was really something in me that said at a certain point in my life, I had to not blame my parents because I was a grown-up and I had to put my big girl pants on and go out there and do it for myself. And so that thing, that trigger inside me, it wasn't always easy, but it allowed me to move forward and really compartmentalize. And then it was through therapy I was able to see some of the behaviors I had acquired. I was thinking I was all the way peaceful with it, but it was because of certain things I had picked up in childhood, I was still carrying it, but not looking to blame them for it, but it was just there. And I had to uproot that because it had deep roots and still sometimes will rear its ugly head. I think for me it was like at some point it was just like the Bing, you're a grown-up. You can sit here and blame your parents for your life, or you can go out here and make something of yourself and try to do better. And so that was just an internal catalyst for me. And then along the way, my parents were phenomenal grandparents. They really were. I saw my parents try to be better, do better with my sisters, with my niece and my nephew. And even though it was really hard for me, I was the guinea pig, sort of, being the oldest. I could see that and see the effort, and then it was through therapy, prayer, and just forgiveness. You know, I wanted my mom to go off peacefully. I wanted my dad to go off peacefully. And I love my mom and dad. I see signs of my mother all the time. I'm butterflies. When I see a butterfly, I know that's my mom. And even though it was a tough childhood, and even as an adult, when my mother would try to give me affection in a very normal way, like want to hold my hand, I would have to talk to myself and say, give her the grace to let her hold your hand, because you were used to that hand not being a pleasing hand when you were a child, but she was trying. And so again, that's where the grace came in. It wasn't always easy. It was a lot of forgiveness and a lot of forgiving myself and realizing it really was not my fault. And that's the biggest thing for the things that we carry, is understanding that it was not your fault. And so that was a big, big, big burden for me to try to lift off.
If I could just leave you with one thing, I'll share something that God spoke to me, because I had similar. My mom had me at 16, she struggled with drugs her whole life and whatever. But the point, what hit me was one day, I told you sometimes he speaks in threes, and so I was sitting there and he was like, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. Heard that scripture my whole life. Okay, God. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. Say it again, I'm telling you, I knew you. So what does that mean? I knew you. She was just a vessel you came through. your mother, I'm your father. Yes, you have to have these relationships. But this unconditional love and covenant that I have for you, dwell in that. Submerge yourself in that. Be in that presence, in my word, and living in my water, in my presence, the joy of my presence. I knew you. And so that's what I tell myself. He knew me. He knew me. I'll serve, I'll be here, I'll do whatever my family needs. But at the end of the day, I have to know that I have to release them from being what they have not come into yet.
Thank you. That was, yes, clap for that, guys. Thank you. Keisha Williams and Terry. Time is a round of applause, guys. Thank you all so much. I'm sure they'll be here later throughout the day taking any questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Those are yours. It's the gold page. Guys, we're going to keep the momentum moving. I'm going to bring up our next speaker, who is Octavia Connor. She helps organize clients' finances, decrease business taxes, and say yes to the profits. She is the CEO and owner of Say Yes to Profit. How many guys like profit, like your money in the green? Y'all like our money in the green? You do, okay. We like our money in the green. We're going to bring, and she has on green. Bring it up, Miss Octavia Connor.